Welcome to GuildEra. In this video, I will be teaching you everything you need to know to play the game. If you have any questions or want clarifications, just ask in our Discord channel. Our team will answer as soon as possible. All playtesting sessions will be hosted by our game designer Colin, answering questions as you play. So don't worry, you'll be good to go after watching this video. Without further ado, let's dive in. The game is set in a fantasy world with a vibrant finance industry and a stock market. Public companies traded in this stock market are guilds, and each of these guilds have 10 shares traded publicly. Guilds are run by guildmasters. They're biggest shareholders. The guilds make money by going on adventures, raiding dungeons, and looting treasures. As players, the four of you are aspiring tycoons in the adventure industry. You aim to get rich by operating your guilds well and trading stocks smartly. At the beginning of the game, each of you have started your career with control of a new guild, 4 shares of that guild, and some 50 gold in cash you can further invest with. Throughout the game, you will be wearing both the hat of a guildmaster and the hat of an investor. As a guildmaster, on behalf of your guilds, you will hire mercenaries, buy equipment, choose dungeons to raid, and decide how to use your earnings. As an investor, you will buy and sell stocks, drive the prices up or down, gain control of more guilds, or even invest in and start new guilds. The game takes place across 3 eras: Era 1, Era 2, and Era 3. The game will enter a new era, for example from Era 1 to Era 2, or from Era 2 to Era 3, when the most difficult existing dungeon is successfully raided. Entering Era 2 unlocks 3 new guilds, stronger mercenaries and equipment, more difficult dungeons, and each guild can hire their 3rd mercenary. Special consultants with abilities can also be hired. Whereas entering Era 3 will unlock the highest tier of mercenaries, equipment, and dungeons, and each guild can hire their 4th mercenary. The game ends when either the most difficult dungeon of Era 3 is raided, or after 9 rounds, whichever happens first. At game end, the player with the highest net asset value wins. Net asset value is the sum of your cash and the value of your stock holdings. In this example, you own 4 shares of Guild A. Each has a stock price of 120. So your position in Guild A is worth 480. Similarly, your position in Guild D is worth 200. You also own 200 in cash, so your net asset value is hence 880. In each round, there will be a stock phase, followed by a raid planning phase, and a dividend phase. Round 1 doesn't have stock phase, so we will start the game by operating our guild and planning our first raids. A lot of what we talked about, such as the current round number, current phase, current era, nav table, and other key game information will always be displayed on the right of the game interface. We will now talk about what happens in the raid planning phase. Each guild has its own treasury, not to be confused with your own cash holdings. As Guildmaster, you will invest the guild's treasury into power, which helps you raid more difficult dungeons. This is what the raid planning interface looks like. As a Guildmaster, this is what you have in the guild's treasury, and you can deploy these to acquire power for your guild through mercenaries, equipment, and more. What are the different powers in the game you can get? The first type of power is physical. Physical power comes from fighters and swords. It is strong early game, but scales badly into the late game. When you are building physical power, you will focus more on the mercenaries. The power boost from equipment will be less significant. Despite the bad scaling late game, it will still be relevant by being a minor prerequisite to some key dungeons in Era 3. Coming up, we have the range power, coming from archers and bows. Unlike physical power, it is weak early game, but becomes quite the powerhouse in the late game. Good archers are nothing without good gear, so you will need to properly invest in the equipment. In particular, bows of higher levels will have more power when wielded by higher level archers who can unlock their potentials through headshots and critical hits. Finally, we have magic power coming from wizards and staffs. Unlike the other 2 powers, magic power doesn't have particular power spikes and is solid throughout the game. What's special about it is that it has the most interaction with different guild abilities and rare items. That means how strong or weak magic power gets in each game depends on how you and other players have used some of the abilities and items. The core way of building these powers for your guild is building a team of mercenaries. Each guild can hire up to 4 mercenaries. The first 2 mercenaries can be hired from the start, but the third and fourth mercenaries can only be hired Era 2 and Era 3 onwards. You can recruit up to 1 mercenary each round as long as you have the available slot and money. Once hired, you cannot easily fire any of your mercenaries. This means hiring too many low-level mercenaries will cap your power ceiling and make it hard for your guild to grow and fight harder dungeons. To hire mercenaries, simply head to the Recruit Mercenaries table here. You can hire fighters, archers, or wizards, each with different power stats and prices. Higher-level mercenaries will be available as the game progresses. Here we spend 70 gold to recruit a fighter level 1 into our lineup here, giving our guild 40 physical power. Another way to invest your treasury into power is through equipment. You can buy any number of equipment every round from the shop. Equipment has to be equipped to count towards your guild's power. Each mercenary can only equip 1 equipment, so usually you don't want to own more equipment than mercenaries. But there will be exceptions in the late game. Usually only fighters can equip swords, only archers can equip bows, and only wizards can equip staffs. But certain guild abilities will let you mix and match. Again, you can see the different swords, bows, and staffs in the shop, each with their own power stats and prices. We will buy a sword and a staff here for our fighter and wizard. You will find the bought equipment in inventory. Remember to equip them. They won't count towards your guild's power otherwise. Other than the shop, if you control 2 or more guilds, you can also buy or sell equipment between your guilds. Equipment can be transacted between guilds at prices between plus or minus 20 gold from the original price. This kind of transaction lets you better allocate resources between guilds, especially helping new guilds catch up. They can only be done once per round per player. We now control both Guild A and Guild D, so we can trade equipment between them. Head to the guild that will be the buying side of this transaction. You can see the spare equipment in the inventory of other guilds you control here. If the equipment you want to buy is currently equipped, unequip first to see it here. Decide whether you want to buy it at a discount or a premium. As the sword's original price is 40 gold, you can buy it at a price between 20 and 60. Each guild can hire 1 consultant with a special ability. These abilities range from giving the guild more power, helping it make more money, to giving it an edge in the stock market, and more. These consultants and abilities are what make each guild and each game unique, so do plan how to build your guild around them. Guilds can hire consultants Era 2 onwards. Their abilities will only be active after you have hired them with gold. In this example, we will be spending 90 gold to hire martial art Sifu for our guild. This consultant will teach our fighters Kung Fu, giving them extra power when they are unequipped. With all these set up, what's left in the raid planning phase is to choose a dungeon to raid. Each dungeon has some power requirements. These could either be for specific types of power or a requirement for the total power of your guild. As long as you meet the requirements, the dungeon will be highlighted green in your interface, meaning you can raid it successfully. Our guild here has a focus on physical power, so the dungeons available here are either those with requirement of just some of all powers, or those specifically requiring physical power. Each dungeon has its own reward. These rewards are guaranteed and repeatable. Any guild that successfully raids a guild will get its reward and update its earning. Earnings acquired this way will either go into the guild's treasury or be paid out as dividend. Some dungeons, on top of having rewards, will also have treasures to loot. Treasures, unlike rewards, are one-off and not repeatable. There are 3 types of treasures in the game: cash, items, and stock multiplier up. The first type of treasure is cash. Normally, guilds have 80% chance of looting a cash treasure from a dungeon they successfully raided. The chance will become 100% if you are raiding dungeons from a previous era. Only 1 guild will be able to loot the cash treasure. If multiple guilds raid the same dungeon successfully, either one of them randomly loots it or no one does. For example, in the case of 2 guilds, there is a 1 in 25 chance of both guilds not getting the treasure. Cash treasure looted does not count towards the guild's earning, and so will not boost the guild's share price. It will also always go straight into the guild's treasury and won't be able to be paid out as dividend. The second type of treasure is rare items. They have the same loot chance and variations as the cash treasures. These items looted have one-off effects and can be used from the guild's inventory. The last type of treasure is stock multiplier up. These treasures are only from Dungeon 1F, 2G, and 3I. These three dungeons are the most difficult dungeons in Era 1, Era 2, and Era 3, respectively. Thematically, what happens is that your guild rated the hardest dungeon at the time and became the talk of Wall Street. Everyone thinks highly of your guild, and your stocks are pretty hyped up. Hence, stock price goes up. Unlike other types of treasure, any guild that gets there first will be guaranteed to get it. Multiple guilds can also get it at the same time. Here we choose to raid Dungeon 2D, hoping to loot the item Treasure Binding Rune with an 80% chance. The result of the raid planning phase is shown here, showing which dungeons each guild raided, how much they earned, and if they had looted any treasures. We can see that another guild also raided Dungeon 2D, and only one of us looted the treasure successfully. Other guilds also got to loot the cash or the stock multiplier up treasure. After the raid, we will enter the dividend phase. This entire phase is basically just about making this choice for each of the guilds you control. Do I pay out the guild's reward earned this round as dividend? If you choose yes, shareholders, including yourself, will earn 10% of the reward earned this round per share they own. Oftentimes, you and other players will only collectively own 70 to 80% of the shares. That means not all of the earnings will be distributed to the players. When you choose to pay dividend, the reward not distributed will just disappear, instead of going into the guild's treasury. Thematically, what happens is that those shares are just owned by other investors, not in this game, so the dividend would have gotten into their pockets and left the game. If you choose no instead, 100% of the reward earned will stay in the guild's treasury for future use. In this example, I control both Guild A and Guild E. I choose to pay dividend with Guild A that earned more this round, and the guild I have more shares of, and keep the money in Guild E. As you can see, as I own 5 shares of Guild A, I get paid half of Guild A's earning this round. Rob has 2 shares of Guild A, so he gets paid a part of the earning as well. Guild E is keeping the money in its treasury, so none of the shareholders gets paid for it. I also have a small stake in Guild D, so I get paid a little over there as well. The money in the guild's treasuries actually do not count towards your net asset value, so that's one reason to pay out dividend. But the bigger reason, of course, is to use the dividend paid out to buy more of your own shares, or even the shares of rival guilds, in the coming stock phase. This is the interface of the stock phase, and as you can see, there are 2 parts: stock price, stock positions, and the actual buying and selling of stocks happen in this bottom part of the interface. However, much like in real life, to make informed trading decisions, you will have to do your due diligence and learn everything about the guilds. That's why the summary of each guild is shown here in the top part. Here you can see the treasuries, the mercenaries, the inventory, and the powers of each of these guilds. So, what can you do in these stock phases? There are 6 steps in each stock phase. Step 1, Step 2, all the way to Step 6. And each player can do 1 action per step. These actions are: buy 1 share of any guild, sell 1 share of any guild, or just pass and do nothing. That said, there are some restrictions to when you can buy or sell. You cannot buy a share if you already own 6 shares of that guild. In real life, this will be due to antitrust or anti-monopoly reasons. You also cannot buy a share if you have already sold shares of that guild this round. This gets refreshed in a new stock phase. On the other hand, you cannot sell if you are the guild master and own 2 shares or fewer. You also cannot sell if the guild is in prep mode and hasn't been floated yet. We will talk more about that later. The interface has already disabled actions you cannot take, so don't worry. So now you know how to buy or sell stocks, but what about the prices the stocks are traded at? In GuildEra, stock prices are calculated as the product of earnings and multiplier. You can think of multiplier as hype. For 2 guilds that earn the same amount last round, the guild with more hype or higher multiplier will have their stock prices higher. And of course, if a guild earns more, it will worth more than other guilds with same multiplier as well. Multiplier is actually a common way of valuing companies in real life too, but of course the multiplier used will consider many more factors. Each guild starts with a multiplier of 0.8. The multipliers will go up or down by 0.1. There are 4 ways for the multiplier to change, and mastering them will be essential to staying ahead of your opponents in the stock market. Multiplier will go up twice, or in other words, by 0.2, by the end of the stock phase if 8 or more shares out of the 10 are owned by 3 or more players. This is what the game refers to as strong hold. Players are hoarding these stocks, showing a lot of confidence and bullish sentiment, so the price goes up. Another way the multiplier goes up will be the stock multiplier up treasures we talked about earlier. Multiplier will go down by 0.1 if anyone sells shares of that guild. These stack when multiple players sell at the same time. Multiplier also goes down if the guild earned less than its previous earnings, which is also referred to as underperform. This can happen if a guild decides to raid an earlier dungeon for treasure, or the dungeons have gotten harder to raid due to items or abilities. Here we will be selling a share of Guild B. As Ozan is also selling a share of Guild B this step, the multiplier went down by 0.2. We now buy another share of Guild A. At the end of this stock phase, as more than 8 shares of Guild A are owned by me, Ozan, and Tutor, Stronghold is triggered, so Guild A's multiplier went up by 0.2. Other than stock price changes, trading activities can also change Guildmasters. Guildmaster of a guild will change when the previous Guildmaster no longer owns the most shares of that guild. This can happen in 2 scenarios: when someone buys more shares and overtake the current Guildmaster, or when the Guildmaster sells shares until someone has more shares than them. In cases of tie breaks, the Guildmaster will remain the same. In this example, I will first buy a share of Guild E. Even though I am also one of the largest shareholders, as there is a tie break, the existing Guildmaster, Rob, will remain the Guildmaster. However, if I buy one more share of Guild E, I will now overtake Rob and become the new Guildmaster. Occasionally, some players might not have any guilds to run in the raid planning phase. In that case, they will spend time picking up some part-time jobs and earn 40 gold. Earning 40 gold as such each round is very strong. No one can voluntarily decide to go guildless due to the cannot sell if Guildmaster rule. So unless you have really good reasons to take away someone else's last guild, don't let that happen. As mentioned earlier, other than the 4 starting guilds per player, there are 3 more new guilds unlocked when entering Era 2. They are Guild E, Guild F, and Guild G. These guilds are locked at first and will be available to buy in stock phase Era 2 onwards, with earnings starting at 40 and share price starting at 32. These guilds start in prep mode, meaning they are not operational yet, and their shareholding and guildmaster information will only be available to its shareholders. You will need to buy its share to know about it, like some private companies in real world. These guilds will leave prep mode, float, and become public when 4 or more shares are collectively bought by all 4 players. After floating, shareholding, and guildmaster information will be publicly available to even non-shareholders. In the coming stock phase, the guildmaster of the now floated guild will get to operate it from scratch, with 300 gold in treasury to deploy. As you can see, entering Era 2, all of the new guilds are available to trade. However, their stock holding positions and guildmaster information are hidden from me. After buying a share of Guild E, I now see that Ozan has already been building a position in Guild E, ready to float it. Guild F has also been floated, hence the information is now available to me, even though I am not a shareholder. That's all for the game rules, and you should now be ready to play. Feel free to ask questions in Discord if there are parts you don't understand. If you have time, we strongly encourage you to watch our video on strategies as well. Knowing more of what's happening and what to pay attention to will help you enjoy the game a lot more. Thank you again, and we look forward to playing GuildEra with you soon.